Stavros Halkias, I just call him Stavvy, and I listen to his podcast on occasion. I regret not listening to Cometown, but forgive me, Stavvy. I was put off by the name and just chose not to listen at all. I thought it would be gross, but turns out I've become such a big fan of his comedy. I loved his Netflix special, Fat Rascal. I've recommended it to so many people, and I've started listening to his new show, Stavvy's World. And he is just like, he's a great comedian. He's the rare cis white male, or he would say he's Greek, but cis male comedian. Let's just put it out there. Although, no, in one of his bits, he's like, I'm white, but someone said, you're not, whatever. Cis male comics who never punches down. And so, like, a lot of liberals are learning about him recently because he went on Theo Von, and turns out he's not a right-winger, a rare comedian who isn't one of Joe Rogan's endangered species of comics who just care about, like, vaccine mandates and, you want to put on a dress and call yourself a woman? Wow, we need more of that on our airwaves. Anyway, Stavros went on Theo Von's show and just talked about progressive values in a common sense way. We need more of this for sure.
And watch how he redirects some of the right wing / sort of insensitive remarks from Theo Von, which, of all these guys, I think Theo Von might mean the best, but I don't think that's a low bar. But I think
the ecosystem doesn't allow anyone who means well to even learn anything.
It's clear that
the Roganverse is actively a place that means you're just mired in stupidity, and so you don't learn anything.
Kind of like innuendo and conspiracy theory, or sort of like half-baked ideas. So I think I think Stav does a good job here of misdirecting some of the potential for bigotry / misinformation, or whatever you want to call it, that Theo would maybe espouse with a less credulous guest to push back on him.
Right.
What are people truly scared of, do you think, when they talk about Trump? But what is it? I kind of start to wonder, what do people be scared of?
I can tell you so for me, I didn't love either candidate here. I really didn't understand being enthusiastic about either candidate. I think, I'm not a Trump guy, obviously. I think he is dangerous in the things that I'm scared of the most. And the thing that made me lean towards Kamala was, more than anything, was the Supreme Court, and that it would be, if it's put under like far right control for the next however long. We've already seen, women's right to, over their bodies, the abortion, Roe v. Wade's been overturned, which I think is really dangerous. That's going to really affect women's health care. Already in states that banned it, you see they're getting less just general OBGYN care because it's more dangerous to be a doctor in those states. So we don't think about shit that trickles down. So it's harder to get just general health care, let alone abortion, in Texas now for women. And that's only going to get harder in rural states. And I think, for me, that was the number one issue. Yeah. That's really scary to me.
Well, especially with the border being open and they're letting rapists in. It's fucking, you know what I'm saying, though? It's like you're just... yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know if it's the best time to repeal that.
Yeah. If we're going to follow your logic and you claim they got rapists coming in, maybe we should also keep abortion. But, I think we got plenty of homegrown rapists too. But, yeah.
We've got our own.
Sure.
Some union guys.
We've got some heirloom American rapists for sure.
Jesus Christ.
But I think that's the number one thing that scares me is about that, because it's not only that's the first step, and I think you can really see stuff that we take for granted as progress. Gay marriage is another thing. There's a really weird cultural. I think this is what happens anytime the party that's backed by the powers that be, big business, the rich people, the richest people in the world want far right politicians, and I think.
Still?
Absolutely, without question.
I feel like tech is now. I just feel like the party.
Elon Musk is a huge Trump guy.
That's a good point.
I think rich people will support whoever's in power, number one, but they want to transfer wealth from the poor to the rich. They've been really good at doing it. The biggest issue, I think, the reason the Democrats lost is because they pretend that there is no problem. I think inflation. I think a big part of inflation is that companies realize they can just charge you more and say it's somebody else's fault. A lot of it's price gouging. That's true. And
everything gets so much more expensive.
And companies are, some of it is just real inflation, but some of it is companies are hiding behind inflation. And like, Democrats did nothing to stop price gouging, right? They didn't even say they were going to do it. You can't tell people that things are going good when they're just clearly not. The most important issue for people is that things are they have no health care. Wage inequality is out of control. People's wages have not kept pace with how much bosses are earning.
Yeah, well, what percent? I mean, Bernie Sanders said greatly that he thought if AI starts to happen for companies, right? So companies are making more money.
We don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't get anything and we keep all the fucking profits. And I do think, I think we talked about it a little bit last time where it's like AI as a tool fucking do creative shit. It's so weird when it's like it should be making normal people's lives easier. It shouldn't just be for rich people to be able to charge less. Like there should be some protections for workers, and we should be able to you should be able to buy a house, all these regular issues that weren't really hit on. It was just, well, you got to vote for us because the other person's worse. And even though I think that is true, that's not a winning message. That's nothing, especially when the other side is they're at least saying shit's bad. Well, yeah. And they're saying it's for the wrong reasons. I don't think it's immigrants' fault. It's definitely not. Trans people aren't the people buying up houses and not letting you buy it. You know what I mean? Like, but at least they're saying something's wrong, and they're saying some shit, in my opinion. They're trying to make it culture war stuff. They're trying to divide people who should be on the same side by saying, gay people are bad, trans people are bad, when it's like the people trying to you are rich people. That's how it's always been. That's the tale as old as time.
Boom. I didn't even want to interrupt that because that's a conversation where you could easily imagine having that with somebody in your life who voted for Donald Trump. And Stavvy approaches it in this incredibly accessible way, even when Theo is making kind of some dumb points, like that point about, I shouldn't be judgmental, but it's just like, how can you say that about tech at this point? No, I mean, it's outdated. In part, this is the problem with the Democrats embracing the tech industry until, what do you know, eventually they get massive and they have shareholders and they're multi-billion-dollar corporations that can't have reached their ceiling with growth, but investors expect growth eternally. That's why they're investing in your company. And then who do they turn to? Well, you need to rig the system in your favor. Republicans are the better party to do that for you, and that's exactly how this kind of thing goes.
This was a masterclass in how to talk to a dumb guy. Yeah. And I mean, like, capital D, capital G, like a professional dumb guy. It was good.
He didn't see the framing on the border. He laughed and then gently moved him away from it. He could have said that's a really racist thing to say because it is, but I don't even think he's conscious of it.
And not only that, I also don't. I think you sort of do have to somewhat, even in the moment when you're in this space with this large of a following, you don't cede the ground with the point that he was making, which is even with what the joke Theo Von was trying to make. Because he was still sort of trying to make a right-wing point while saying, but I guess they shouldn't decriminalize, they shouldn't make abortion illegal because they shouldn't make abortion illegal because there might be more people coming over to sexually assault people from Mexico.
Right.
So, and Stav made clear to say by your logic, not saying oh yeah, for sure. He's saying by your logic, you shouldn't then continue to draw the right-wing framework forward by saying, it's just doubly worse and abortion's going to be gone and there's still so many rapists coming over the border.
Yes.
He's saying if anything, you should be implying that abortion care is still important. And then B, he also made the point, which it's in the guise of a joke, which I still think is important. But when you unpack that joke a little bit, he's also saying, part of answering that question of what you should fear about Trump is what we talked about in the first hour with Digby, which is literally this credibly accused chronic sexual predator rising up to the ranks of the commander in chief again, and willfully intentionally staffing his cabinet with sexual predators.
Right, like Stavvy could have said, "How? Oh, you mean like is Pete Hegseth coming over the border?"
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That would have been an own, but
right. I think to sort of like message broadly in a way where you are appealing / transmitting that to a larger audience, it was better to kind of play with the joke and make the point while knowing that other people also could understand, who are more like me or you, understand and can also transmit the point that, like, if you want to really talk about any sort of crisis that is involving sexual violence and sexual predation, we can look to our the halls of power and the pews of our fucking churches before we look at people hopping over the border.
Right, 100%. So that is a prime example of how to educate somebody or slowly de-radicalize them. And it's not going to be from one conversation like that. It's going to be from many, many conversations like that. And it's not easy. But Stavvy reaffirming everybody's faith in white male cis straight comics, right? I mean, like, it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to be like these Roganites and punch down all the time. You can be a really funny person that also talks about the world in a way that is productive. The idea that comedy is just about triggering the libs is a false premise set up by like a podcast ecosystem that wants you to think that that's the only way to artistically speak about the world in that medium. Sour Diesel Stavros is one of the few I've seen who can successfully break through the conservative brains with a gentle hand. Yes. Punch drunk pulpit. The people yearn for more Brad Cam. Milo the Dango Bilo says, did Emma also avoid the True Anon podcast and Chapo Trap House because of the silly titles? Come Town is right in line with these leftist shows that are also funny. To be honest with you, no, I listen on occasion to both True Anon and Chapo. I don't listen to a ton of political podcasts outside of doing this show or doing my old job. But I thought it was a sex podcast. I had no idea. Okay.
And to be fair, as someone who is familiar with all of them, Come Town is much more improvisational, much more focused on like kind of barrier touching / breaking comedy. Chapo, the guys have a similar comedic bent, but they're usually tackling actual policy and history and politics more than the guys on Come Town.
Well, I mean, but I wish I had listened to it at the time. But yes, I was put off by the title and the letters being white dripping liquid.
I think as a woman, I can also understand potentially.
No women in my life had even heard about Come Town. Like, this is the kind of thing where I'm just, I wasn't aware, but I wish I did because I love Stavros. So that's my point about it.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.